My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sangkaran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Nyanis. I wish you all Happy New Year 2023. Today I'm going to start, an important chapter in Mahan's I God philosophy of life. The last 2 years we covered chapter 1 to chapter 16. And I think most of you all could refer back to the YouTube clips. And in our daily WhatsApp digital satsang, I post, one message at a time with some key insights to help you with the. So today I'm going to cover about life. In this chapter, Mahan speaks about life. And, what is life? Let's define what life is and what this thing called life. All of us have lived, experienced, and some of it is great, some of it is challenging. What do we mean by life, and how do we essentially, make meaning, get greater meaning of our lives and purpose of our lives? And to do that, we really need to understand life in a wholesome, complete, and a more universal way. And this cloud here talks about, about life, love, enlightenment, mindfulness, a few key thoughts that came in my mind of what life is about, and it's not comprehensive. And I want to then really try to, go deeper on what life is about. Most of us have experienced it, and I just want to take us through what that life is. What is life? If you see, life is actually existence of sentient beings. That means all animals and biological beings have life, have consciousness, have existence, though in different frequencies. Everything that is sentient has this life power, the consciousness, the awareness, and this awareness of this material universe that we live in. You have both, non-sentient and sentient life. And how did life come about? And I spoke about that in one of my earlier satsangs. But today we are going to speak about what actually life means. What is the purpose of life? And many of us have gone through this evolutionary state. And did we really know what life is all about? And today I want to talk about the 12 stages of human life cycle. And if we understand the 12 cycles of this human life, we see that we have better understanding of life. We have better understanding of the evolution of life. We have better understanding of the trajectory of life. We then have a better understanding of where we have come from, where we are now, and where we are heading. And I think I want to take you through that journey. And in every aspect of that journey, we will look at that divine, inspirational, spark that is powering life. And I'll speak from that perspective. And in the absence of that, you see that life means something else. In the presence of that, life means a different thing. And I think understanding that gives us a better perspective of what life is and what our journey ought to be. Right? So I want to take you through this 12 stages of life, researching on life itself and the life cycle and experiencing many of this. Although when we are going through that experience, we're not conscious of it, we just go through the motion. When we sit back and reflect back and introspect, contemplate, reflect, and meditate on it, we say, this is what this life is about. This evolution, this human life cycle is where we have come from. We have experienced, many of us have experienced it. We haven't probably given a lot of thought to it at that time. But now that we are fully aware of it, then we can really use the knowledge to really make our present life very rich, enlightening, and blissful. And as we traverse through this life, how do we navigate this through so that every moment becomes an inspirational, blissful, and enlightening moment. So I want to take you through this 12 stages of life. While we have experience, there are many people that walk into our lives that are in different stages of their lives. And if we are fully informed and fully enlightened, we can actually help them, guide them, and also, experience that life jointly with them. So this is a very nice article that you can download and read the full article. I'm going to give you the gist of it, and then I'm going to come back over the next few satsangs to talk about how we divinize life. This is an article by the American Institute for Learning and Human Development. The link is there. And here they speak about the 12 stages of life. And actually, Swamiji captures that in his entire book, that different stages of life. But here, we're going to, in this satsang, we're going to summarize that. So what this is essentially is that, we have the first stages of our lives, first stage, which is what we call pre-birth. And this is the stage of what, most thinkers, philosophers, great seers say that this is the potential state. And this is the state where the child is not born yet, and there is this two couples thinking of having a child. Most of them think that when they want to bring a life together, they ought to think very carefully what that life that they're bringing, on board. Many young people don't think about it. It happens at random. And we see that when the conception takes place, the health of both people are very important. The health of the body, health of the mind, health of the intellect is very important. And when that three things don't come together, we see that it has an impact on the fetus. It has an impact on the child. So we see that when parents are not healthy, when they abuse alcohol, drugs, a whole range of things, it impacts that seed that is going to form, both from the male side and also the female side. And that has an impact on the quality of the child's life and the body and the mind and so on. So this is why we see that, this potential life that we're bringing has tremendous potential in the sense that it could be a Shakespeare, or it could be a Michelangelo, or it could be, a Mozart, or it could be a Mahan. And it all depends very much on the state of the parent's mindset, the state of the parent's health of the body, and that determines, this life. And we see that, when parents don't keep themselves fit, or, mentally are not very strong, it has an impact on the child. So here, this stage is what we call the full potential state of the existence of life. And the existence of life depends very much on the physiology that's contributed by to people, right? So when people want to have children, a few things that they need to look at, keep themselves fit, keep themselves harmonious, making sure that when conception takes place, the mindset is in the right frequency, healthy, positive, inspirational. And when the mother is carrying the child, making sure that the mental health is very important, the physical health is very important, good nutrition is very important. We know now that children that don't get proper nutrition, or when the mother is not mentally harmonious, it has an impact on the children. So this 12 stages of life is very important. And we see that the first stage, that is why we see that when you take a spiritual path, when you have a spiritual partnership, we see that the child become very spiritual, very strong mentally, and so on. So this state is very important, particularly for people who are planning to have children. The next state is actually also what they call the birth stage, which is the hope. So we see that potential state, and then the hope is when a child is born, the child is innocent, clean slate. And this is critical because if the parents, when the child is born, if the parents are positive, has a lot of optimism, tremendous um, enthusiasm for life, we see that the child, when it's born, it actually uh, synchronizes its mindset, it synchronizes its growth according to the environment. And I always say that the first guru for a child is actually their parents. So here we see that, when parents have children and when they, have that positive, harmonious, continuously, you see that when a child is born, it responds to the world around it. Initially, it's kind of navigating its way through, but the positive responses enables the brain to grow, the neural pathways to grow, and it starts feeling its way around. And this is where, if there is trouble in that partnership, it also impacts that birth, the growth of the child. So we see that, in many families where, there is a lot of harmony and, when the child is born, there's a lot of positivity. You see that the child's growth and, response rates are very good. And then we see that the next phase is actually the infancy phase. And this is the phase where as soon as birth takes place and the child, there's rapid growth because there's responses that are coming from the external environment, both from the parents, from what they're observing, the sound, everything. It creates that growth. And this is the most important part, the dynamic growth of any human being, right? So they call this inner dynamo of the humanity. That is clean slate, and it's responding to the external stimulus. And this is the fastest growth where the brain takes place. And we see that when children are not getting proper nutrition, there's a hardware problem. Brain doesn't grow. Number two is that the stimulation is also very important. If you expose the children to, positive things, responses, as they're observing, as eye and the ears, this neural growth. But if you put a child away in a quiet environment, no positive stimulus, you see that the brain stops growing. And these are hardware that shapes our experience as human experience. And this vitality is very important. So as parents, as grandparents, we play a key role in ensuring that the stimulation that we give the children creates that vitality. Listening to nice music, listening to soothing things has a positive impact, both when the child is in the mother's womb and the child is in the, after birth, that up to 3 years old. So we see that, so we are starting to see the evolution and the shaping of the human experience, the life experience of a human being. The next one is actually the early childhood. And we see that, yes, the first 3 years is critical in forming the hardware, the stimulation. And the next phase is actually learning, responding back, that playfulness, they will start to do things. And this is critical because that sometimes they make mistakes, they pull things, all those things. And when parents said, no, stop doing this or reprimand them, actually we're curtailing some of their growth. And I remember one of the great scientists was telling how when his son went to at that age, to the refrigerator, managed to open the refrigerator and took out an egg. He was looking at the egg, and then he dropped the egg, and the egg just made a mess on the floor. And being someone who's well informed of learning, he's an astrophysicist, and he says, most people would have scolded the child, or he says, no, this is the child's first experience of learning about the egg and the force of gravity, and that when he lets go the egg falls down because of gravity, and it makes a mess, right? And you get the kid to learn to clean it up, and you see that there is a learning that takes place. But when we say that stop doing that, what happens is that the learning process also stops. So that age of the playfulness is very important, exposing them, taking them to the park, all that are critical. And it helps build the hardware that later on enables all the software of learning, experiencing, introspecting, contemplating, reflecting in the later part is critical. So this first four stages are really important in building that hardware in the brain. And then the next part, which is also, so these are the foundational, and this is why we see that in many, ancient religious belief systems, they have very strong, when a child is born, under what circumstances parents' mindset should be, so that, their mind and their body makes the baby or the fertilization taking place, or the fetus forming in the best environment, exposing them to music, prayer thing, meditation, and then eventually taking the children through the various teachings and, both various exercises and so on to build both the hardware and the software. And by the time they come to the age of 6 to 8 years old, you see that the hardware is strong, the software, new learnings, exploration, introspecting, all this starts taking place. Now, at the age of 6 to 8, we see that what we call the middle childhood state. And this is where we see that the child starts building the inner subjective self, becoming more conscious of itself, starting to develop. This is the first time they're starting to develop their own. And this is what we see that, in most school systems, the school systems start at the age of 6 years old. So the first 5 years is the formative years that they learn. Although these days we have preschool that helps build this. But in Malaysia, normally the child starts at the age of 7 years old. And if you don't get kindergarten education, a lot of the development doesn't take place. And when they start at 7 years old, they're a little bit late. The window is closing. The window of the brain and the mind starts closing. So in many countries, the children's education start at an early age to build that hardware. So we see that at the age of 6 to 8, the inner self, the subjective self starts developing. And this self becomes more aware. And if you ask all of us, ask yourself, when did you first start remembering something, right? As a person, as a being. And I can reflect back and I say, I can't remember anything before the age of 3. Maybe at the age of 3.5, 4 years, I recognize certain things. So there's this personality of that self starting to form, But actually, at the age of 6, you start becoming more stronger. You become more self-conscious. You're building your own identity. And slowly you're starting to form independent, creative thoughts, inspiration. You want to do things on your own, and this phase is very important because the people that are around you shape your imagination. You see, and if you have people who are always negative, critical, telling them don't do this, don't do that, you see that imagination starts diminishing. But when you have people that are inspiring, spiritual people say, "Man, try this, explore this, read this, do this," you see that their imagination starts, expanding, and if they are among the presence of really people who read, listen to great things and, discuss deep things, slowly you see that there is an intellectual osmosis or mental osmosis that starts slowly. They may not understand, but they're becoming more and more aware as, things are repeated and deepened. So that formative age of 6 to 8 years old is really important, where it becomes a source of creativity, a source of inspiration to become an artist, to become a scientist, to become great people if they are associated with people around that. Similarly, if they're among people who are negative, indulge in alcohol and other things, the tendency will move in that direction. So this state is really critical in nurturing that deep inner life and the trajectory of children. Now, the next phase comes, which is very interesting, which is the late childhood phase, 9 to 11 years old, right? And this is where they become much more older. They're starting to become more sophisticated in terms of acquiring the social skills, the technical skills that helps them, develop their own strategy, develop their own, innovativeness. And this is where we see that they become more and more independent. Though they are dependent on others, they become more independent in their thoughts. And this is where, as parents, you have to allow them to make mistakes, allow them to explore new things with safety nets, right? So that when they fall down, okay, you've got to get up and do things on your own. If things become more serious, you are there to coach them, guide them. So that age, the ingenuity of them starts expanding. They want to try different things, right? So this allowing them to grow, make mistakes is critical. And that is what allows now the brain to try different things. Okay, this doesn't work. Let's try form new strategies, right? And what we see sometimes is the parents mollycoddle the kids. They do everything for the kids. They and you see that children don't learn that strategies to mitigate challenges and uncertainties and so on. So that age of 9 to 11 is very important for them to make mistakes, learn from mistakes, try different things, and form new strategies, strategic postures of life. And that is why we see that, when you allow kids to play games, allow kids to try this team sports, leadership, comradeship, all those things is learning strategies of life. And this is very important as we grow later on in our lives to see how we see ourselves, developing ourselves, that from moving from the selfish to the selfness to the self-realized, right? So we see this a very important stage of evolution. The next phase is actually of human life is actually about adolescence. And this is a very, challenging, a period where they are neither children nor are they adults. So, and this is the phase where, they have a lot of biological changes that are happening in their body. You see that a lot of hormones that are starting to, play its chemistry. There's a sexual awakening, emotional awakening. There's a lot of spiritual passion, learning new things. A combination of everything starts, and the chemical reactions sometimes, if not guided properly, they can find it very difficult. It's a lot of emotional turbulence. They can't make sense. They can't make decisions, and so on. And this is where it is very important to be mentors. So parents evolve from fully doing everything to slowly letting go, and eventually becoming at that stage coaches and mentors to listen to them, guiding them, giving them, support, as opposed to telling them what to do. And this is part of the evolution and learning. And my own experience of my parents is that they didn't tell me to study, or they just provided an environment for you to thrive. So this is a very important phase for them to, be for parents and the guides to be there, but for them to, slowly manage through these challenging experiences through support and also knowing that there is a backup to help them. And this is the period also is that the learning curve starts really, going up, in the sense that they are going to learn how to navigate through various challenges of life, learning life skills, learning skills that will help them build their profession, their own sustainability, and even including responsibility and discipline and so on. So you're seeing here that the hardware is starting to take shape, and the software, the new learnings are starting to take shape, and both the hardware and the software are reinforcing one another. And in all this, that spiritual component is so important. What is it? What do we mean by spiritual component? That whatever changes that are happening, it is happening from within. And to nurture that strength within, the self-confidence within, and that requires self-exploration, trying out things, making mistakes, learning, unlearning, relearning, testing out, reading about great people, mentors. All these are crucial in terms of helping people shape their own independent personality. And that age of 12 to 20 is very important. And then once they've acquired that knowledge, and you see that early adulthood, which is about 20 to 35, is crucial. I didn't put the ages there. It's about 20 to 35. Now, I think they've got the skill sets to know what responsibilities are, what discipline is, and slowly use those skill sets to chart their own career, chart their own selection of their mates or soulmates, chart their own direction, what they want to study, what professions, whether you want to go back to school, whether you want to learn new things, who they select to have families, their financial status. So you see that, and slowly decoupling away from their parents' support to becoming independent people who are about to start their own families. So we see this evolution of human life. And as they progress to about 35, you see that, well, they probably are married, have a family, have a home, have a job, and they're in a steady state of their lives. What does that mean? Very interestingly, that the first 20 years is rapid growth in their brain, rapid growth in that learning, new softwares are acquired, and when they start using it, new experiences come through. And at the age of 35 to 50, they have accomplished many things. They're in a very good flight, in a steady state, and they can step back a little bit and say, hey, life is great. It's somewhat like a jumbo jet that takes off the thrusters in the early phase, and now you are in a cruising phase. Right? 35 to 50 years old, now you have time to contemplate. You've had your family, you've had a career, you start contemplating, what does all this mean, right? And we see that you take a break from, sometimes you take a from worldly life and you say, okay, I want to do this, I want to explore this, I want to go on a retreat. What does life means, and at the same time, you have responsibility, you have children, you have family, you have work. Sometimes everything comes together, and there are times that you need to take off and say, take a step back and say, look, okay, what is all this about? Not to get fatigue creeping in, complacency creeping in. Step back and say, introspect what life is, contemplate, how do I make things better? How do I continuously feel inspirational? And this is the part that many people don't take time off for themselves, and they get burnt out. And I meet many, many people that say, Guru, I've got everything, but I'm burnt out, tired. My marriage is not working very well. My children are not listening to me. I feel really, I'm not sure what to do. And this is why sometimes, in this phase, it's good to take some time to work, to spend some time with your partner, your children, and that taking time off for yourself first, every morning, every day, having that conversation between you and God. This is your time. And then having that conversation with your life partner or soulmate, having that bond, and with children and your work, and that reinvigorate everything that you're doing. So the contemplative part is very important. And when you don't do that, the fatigue comes in, complacency come in, and this is where trouble come in. Now we move to the next phase. So when that is harmonious, we see that, the brain still is growing, new softwares are coming, new experiences reinforcing. When that phase is not harmonious, you see that you get tired, complacency sets in, you see that you feel depressed, the mind starts shrinking, and you see that you become less productive and efficient. You don't feel inspired. So the alternate is that I always say, introspect, contemplate, reflect, everything that you're doing, and you see it becomes more and more enriched, enlightened, and more blissful. And that prepares us for the next phase, which is mature adulthood. All of us are going to go through this. And this is where we see that our health starts taking a dip, because that's part of the biology. Our hormones are changing, you know, for women, the hormonal changes can have an impact on their bone and osteoporosis. Males go through the same thing too. So we see that, but, if we are positive and inspirational, the mind is still firing away. You're meditating, you're introspecting, contemplating, any other muscles in our body. If we don't use it, we will lose it. So this introspection, contemplation, reflection, and meditation, having the discussion, having that debates, having that, making the mind work, actually keeps the mind healthy, fresh, hormones are firing, the positive, inspirational, and you see that the life experiences as you are aging, you gracefully age. Even if body is complaining, the mind can lift it up and say, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to, have a positive discussion. I'm going to listen to some nice music, have good friends to discuss this. And you see that you become more and more inspirational as you age, right? The alternate is that you see that, when we are not inspirational, when we don't take that initiative, you see that our health declines very fast, because our brain don't have the stimulation. When the brain starts, declining, we start forgetting, all kinds of, disorders come in, and it starts shutting down. And when it starts shutting down, our hormones start changing rapidly, and you start seeing the body starts declining rapidly. So you see that adulthood becomes a very challenging and difficult circumstance, difficult, experience. So this Mahans and all the great saints, always, every day they meditate, they're positive, they're inspirational, they do the things that keeps the body healthy, the mind healthy, and the intellect sharp. And you see that as we accumulate, as we make sense, as we introspect, you see that we've gone through that journey, and we store that in our memory bank, and we think about it, and we start seeing that, hey, these are things that we did really well, that, great. These are things that did not go too well, but we changed our direction and made it better. And we start getting that experiential learning, that wisdom, that we can navigate through the next phase of our lives, but also share that with our children, our grandchildren, and others. And when we do that, we see that we have a purpose in life, that our life experiences, that in its activity, that activation of the mind and sharing and experiencing itself keeps us fresh and also, reinvigorated. And I see this in many elderly people who are very positive. We have this research project on aging, and we see the people who are not active. We have the study going on, and we see a lot of them who are doing yoga and qigong and, doing all kinds of activities, very healthy. Even though they're 80 plus, they're so active, they can drive their car, they're reading. But the other ones that don't do it, you can see the rapid decline. They are in wheelchair, they have this and that. And they can't, all they're thinking about is complaining and, this is not working, that is not working. Whereas the other ones are positive, they're having, all kinds of, music and dance and all those things that are. So life is so much more vibrant and exciting. You see this difference. And there's a lot of scientific study that show this, right? And finally, we see that, we all have to prepare for this. And as we get closer and closer, we see that, at some point, many of us, it's running in many of our minds, but we start becoming more and more reflective. And we see that as our mind becomes more and more stronger, as our mind remembers all those things, we see that it's not about dying. It's about actually about living, the value of living. Hey, I've gone through this stage, I'm 80 plus, I know the end will come, but I'm going to cherish on what the value of life that I've gone through this. In that process itself, you see that it delays that aging process or the negative impact of aging. And you see that, and we don't take things for granted. And as I always say, every year that passes, every birthday we celebrate, remind ourselves that the end is getting closer. As our time becomes more and more finite and limited, every year must create better value for ourselves, our families, and the greater community. And we see that if we live that way, it's not about the end, it's actually about living itself. Right? Now, why this is so important is that we are all going to go through this, and we are all in different stages of our lives. And if we know these 12 steps, we know that we don't have to wait to the 12th step, death and dying, to value life, right? At any point in our lives, we have to have great value of our lives. You could be 20 years old and you say, wow, I'm going to go through this, but I'm going to give my best. You could be 30 years old or 35 years old or 50 years old. You can say, you know what? I still have a lot of mileage, but I'm going to live the best possible. And I know that this is the trajectory. So the value of life doesn't happen in stage 4. It happens in every stage. Every stage you divinize every moment. Every stage you see the divinity in everything that you do, everything that comes into your life, every person that comes into your life. And you see that, no matter where you are in that 1 to 12 steps, the value of life is so enriched. You live an inspirational and a divinized life. You don't have any desires or aspirations or ambitions of life. You divinize every moment of your life. And this is what Mahan speaks about, that you don't have to go anywhere. Everything is there with you. It's just the transformation of the mind. And that evolution, you see that when finally death comes, it'll come to all of us, right? When we are in the final stage, we have no regrets. We have lived an awesome, beautiful life, and we learn to live to outlive everything. No regrets, and you go with a smile. And that's what life is about. It's not about the end, it's about the journey. And that's what I learned from Mahan's teachings. Every moment is an awesome moment. So this is what Mahan's teachings are. And in the next satsang, I'm going to talk about a few things that I've given, you all, I think on the 27th of December, 2022, a few things to explore. Now, when we understand the 12 stages of our lives, we realize that when I speak about the value of life, there is an amazing ocean treasure of knowledge and treasure of that inspirational divinity that is embedded in all of us, that value, that give value from step 1 to step 12. And that is an ocean of that value. And in the next, that ocean has multiple stages. In any ocean, I pose 5 questions, and I want you to explore that 5 questions. And it's about, in that ocean, we've got waves. Life is full of waves. How do we ride the waves? If we don't learn to ride the waves, we are going to be drowned in that waves. Why does the waves take place? What causes that waves? Nature tells us why waves take place in the ocean. Find out within our own ocean what causes that waves. In the next class, we will explore that. What happens when we go down beneath that wave? What happens to our state of mind? What will help us go down? In the ocean, we have, we can take a submarine, or we can take, various apparatus the divers use. And what do they see when they go down to the depth? What happens to the waves, right? What will help us overcome the waves of life? What will help us go deep down in us? What happens when you get to the depth of the ocean? What do we cognize? So if you ask great divers, they will tell you something happens, in the depth of the ocean. There's a force that has got its own dynamics. Would we experience that same force as we go deep down within ourselves? See, nature has an interesting way of imprinting the same thing. We have our oceans. There's a physics of that ocean. We have an ocean within us. There is a physics of that ocean. We have mastered the ocean outside us. Have we mastered the forces of the ocean within ourselves? And if we are able to do that, if we're able to master the waves, we're able to ride the waves really well. If we are able to master the waves within us, we're able to ride, be aware, and get the best of this thing called life. And this is what we are going to cover in the next satsang. Sandosham.